Russia's war against Ukraine has been a catastrophic disaster on almost every level for Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. The Kremlin is desperate for it to end, which is why Moscow has been keen to join US President Donald Trump in his efforts. This is the view of Con Coughlin, Defense and Foreign Affairs editor at the Telegraph. While Russian propaganda has mocked the discomfort that the Trump administration's policies are causing Europeans, it is an attempt to distract from the pressure Russia itself is under, he says. Russian state-owned media has seized on the Trump administration's initial overtures to Moscow, making the preposterous assertion earlier this week that Washington now aligns with our vision, while another state-owned newspaper claimed Russia could be the beneficiary of Trump's trade wars. Yet, for all its bravado, the Kremlin is desperately hoping that Trump's return to the White House will ultimately herald the end of a war in Ukraine that has decimated the Russian military and torpedoed the Russian economy. The article reads, "The West estimates the total number of Russians killed and wounded in the full-scale war against Ukraine at 850,000. In addition, the invasion has affected the Russian economy. Interest rates have already reached 21%, and funds to finance the war are running out, so it is understandable why Putin jumped at the opportunity to join Trump's peace initiatives. Moscow does not have many levers of influence that it can use in potential negotiations on Ukraine, and the potential deployment of Western peacekeepers in Ukraine must seem like a dagger through the heart for a leader whose raison d'etre is to prevent Western encroachment on Russian borders. Putin's desire to prevent such an eventuality was evident from the Kremlin's condemnation of President Emmanuel Macron, who, in a televised address on Wednesday, reiterated that France, together with other European allies, is prepared to send troops to Ukraine to safeguard any future peace deal, which the Kremlin denounced as confrontational. Far from entering any peace talks from a position of strength, the Trump administration must understand that Putin will do so from a position of abject weakness, the author of the article stated.
After the counterattack of Putin's army with the participation of DPRK soldiers in Kursk region, a 10,000-strong group of the Ukrainian armed forces was under threat of being cut off from Ukraine and completely cut off from supplies. The Telegraph writes about this. The publication links this to Trump's suspension of the provision of intelligence to Ukraine, which led to the rapid advance of the Russian army from two directions to the Unikovka-Sudza highway, which is the main logistical thread for the Ukrainian Armed Forces Group. Now this road is already under fire control of the Russians, who can hit everything that moves along it not only with artillery, but also with drones. One of the Ukrainian military personnel stationed in Kursk region told the publication that the issue of withdrawing Ukrainian armed forces units from the territory of the Russian Federation is currently being considered in order to avoid serious losses. The enemy forces outnumber the Ukrainian forces by 6 times. The threat of encirclement is real, he said. Maps from the analytical resource Deep State show that 2/3 of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Group in Kursk region may be cut off from the main forces. It is currently connected to Ukraine by a corridor 500 meters wide at its narrowest point. Elite units of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, including the 95th Airborne Assault Brigade, the 115th Mechanized Brigade, and the 8th Separate Special Forces Regiment, continue to hold the defense. Russian troops are expanding the combat zone to the villages of Novonkoi and Basavka, and there are also reports that they are taking control of Novia and Staraya Sorokitsa. Experts believe that by limiting the intelligence it provides to Ukraine, the United States is allowing the Russians to operate more freely and successfully hide their intentions when planning attacks. The Ministry of Defense of Russia says that the armed forces of the Russian Federation went to the administrative borders of Sudza and began an assault. There are battles going on in the city. There are about 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers, many of them seriously wounded. According to Ukrainian monitoring agencies, there are about 3K enemy fighters in the area. It is claimed that separate groups of the armed forces of Ukraine began negotiations on the surrender of prisoners and the removal of the wounded in exchange for life and new types of weapons supplied by the United States and France. As the Ukrainian TG channels write, they are ready to give new types of UAVs, satellite encryption systems, a few armored vehicles. Recently, the armed forces of the Russian Federation took the temporarily occupied Sudzhu into an operational environment. Less than 6 kilometers remained until full